Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. Our webinar today is about caring for people at the end of life. I'm your host, Ilaria, a customer success manager here at Nurse Buddy, and our speaker today is Katie Costello, who is an accredited educator, funeral celebrant, and soul midwife. Welcome, Katie. Thank you for joining us. Katie will be talking about the vital role you have as care workers in giving human connection at the end of a person's life. She will share some clear and factual information about the realities of death and dying and how you can offer meaningful support. How you're going to find it useful as well as reassuring. There will be a lot of opportunity to ask Katie's questions after the presentation, which is going to be around 15 minutes. If you have a question, please type it in the Q&A session. You will find it by clicking on the grid at the bottom right of your screen. If you join on a mobile device instead, click on the three dots to see it. We'll wrap up by 2 p.m. We're also recording today's webinar, and we will email it to you afterwards. So I think we're all ready. So over to you, Katie.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Ilaria. This is very exciting. Thank you so much for everybody being here today. And thank you to Jane, Marilyn, as I said, and Ilaria for allowing me to speak and inviting me on. It's always really encouraging when people want to delve into the world of death and dying, or even have the conversation. And I'm so grateful for everybody that's registered, that's here, that will watch this, because I think as a society, as a community, as people, as human beings, we all need to get better at death. We all need to get better at having the conversations, about recognizing it, about being able to face it. Now, I know that's easier said than done. And everything I'm going to talk about today might seem very easy to talk about, but I absolutely know being in these situations, whether it's personally or professionally, being with somebody at the end of their lives is huge. It's a huge thing. But I guess that's a bit of a warning as well there. Be warned, for the next 15 minutes, I will be speaking very openly, very honestly about death and dying. I say it all with love. I say it with compassion, but also I say it from experience. So just a little bit about me and sort of where I've come to and why I feel the way I do about everything I'm going to share with you today. As Laria said, I am a funeral celebrant. So I'm the person that stands at the front in a crematorium or a chapel or wherever you might be. You can have a funeral service anywhere. I'm the person that stands up and shares about a person's life. I'm also a soul midwife, which some people haven't heard of, but you may be more familiar with the term death doula. We have birth doulas, which are essentially those extra people that walk alongside people and through their pregnancy, and then obviously help them make choices, have conversations, support their emotions, their worries, their fears, and then they support right through to the birth. A death doula does the same thing, but at the other end of life. And a soul midwife is just another name or version of a death doula. There are various different organizations offering kind of end-of-life doula, soul midwife doula training. I just happen to connect with and resonate with the idea of a soul midwife. And that is essentially a midwife for the soul. So that we, as soul midwives, we see death as a transition. We see human beings as more than just these physical vessels. So therefore, a midwife, going back to the whole idea of a birth doula and a midwife help this little soul come in. And as soul midwives, we help a soul transition at the other end of life. So that is sort of my main role, and that is the heart of who I am. And some people assume it's something a little bit kind of new age or a little bit, spiritual, and I say this term with love. Sometimes people think it's a bit woo-woo. And by that, they mean maybe things that are a little bit different, alternative, complementary therapies. But I say woo-woo with love. And yes, we can go down that woo-woo path if that's what people choose. But fundamentally, we're there for the person in whichever way they need us. So it could be a faith, religious-based support. It could be practical. It could be having conversations. It could be going to appointments. It can be as deep and connected or practical as people need or want it to be. And the idea of it being new age, it really isn't. Us as soul midwives have been around since the dawn of time. Back in our many other cultures and countries, many other places still do it. But back in our history, even back to here in the UK, there would have been that elder that would have been in the village that would have come to the house and sat with the dying. Now, we often refer to them as something like a crone or a hag. I take that. That's who I am. That's at the heart of who I am. I am the crone or the hag of the village. But that's essentially where soul midwifery comes from. So in all of my years, which has been nearly 13 years now working with the dying, I've also spent 8 years working at my local hospice in that time. But before that, I was in domiciliary care. So I've worked in people's homes. I've supported people in nursing homes as well. I understand district nursing teams, multidisciplinary teams, GPs, community care, equipment, OTs. I get it. I absolutely get what it is to be looking after somebody in their own home, in the community, with the resources and the support that's around you as domiciliary care workers, no matter your position. I've been in team lead positions. I've been within like medication administration, supervision. I understand this world. So in those 13 years, understanding that world, then going into my hospice, what I recognized was that there was no end of life training. No one actually supported anybody to understand what it is to witness a human being die. There was some e-learning, there was some tick box stuff, but nothing can really prepare you for the emotions. But actually, if you can understand what you're going to witness when a body starts to die, if you can recognize the changes that people go through as they start to die, you can be more prepared, and that can in turn support you personally and professionally. It can help you have the conversations. It can help you get family members on board. So what I did through all those years, realizing the training that I didn't have, that was coming to me through experience, I thought, well, why don't I create some? So following that, I have now created my own death education program, which is formally accredited and certified with the CPD certification service. And that is called Dying for a Cuppa. Yes, I'm playing on the word there. It's Dying for a Cuppa, the masterclass. And I'm training that now to all and anybody, all walks of life, all professions. I was in a nursing home in West London this week. I was with specialist nurses in Kent the week before. So this death education is very much from that human perspective. So it's relative to anybody, no matter your professional hat. I also have a podcast, if anybody's interested. If you're a podcast person, I have Dying for a Cuppa, the podcast. So anyway, so that's kind of what's led me to this world. And I'm so glad the guys have asked me to come and talk to you today, because when it comes to end of life care, what I recognized when I was in those domiciliary roles, helping people at home, was that I think we are massively underestimated. And you often hear things like just a carer, or I'm just a carer. Oh, it's just the carers. Oh, the care agency, whatever. Your role and our part as carers, when we are looking after people, particularly in their own homes, is one of the most valuable roles in healthcare. I don't think people really understand what it is that we do in that caring role. And I also don't think people realize sometimes the magnitude of the work that we do when we're in people's own homes. It takes a level of trust. You build connections with people. And I think that's one of the first things I'd like to share with you guys today is whatever your role, do not underestimate yourselves, one, as incredibly caring, compassionate people, but also do not underestimate what you are bringing to somebody's life when you are looking after them. We all know that dom care is more than just the personal care, the washing, the toileting. It's more than that. You become people's confidants. You become people, sometimes the only people that they see in a day. You become their friends. And because of that, what then happens is that you hear the stories. You are there when people share memories about their lives, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the wishes, the wants, the gratitude, but also maybe the regrets. Excuse me, maybe it's the regrets, it's a wish, and it's the wants for them and their family. You hear all of that heartfelt stuff from people. So you play such a vital role when those people then start to deteriorate and start to approach the end of their lives. And when I'd mentioned there, I did a Dying for a Cuppa masterclass in a nursing home this week. These people are incredibly caring, very compassionate, highly skilled. But what was very clear, and I think this is very true of modern day society, but still in care, is that we often think, oh, well, I can't have that conversation. I'm not qualified, or I don't want to get it wrong. You know, there's a fear sometimes amongst being with people when you know them so well for so long, then they start to change. Then they start to have conversations with you about things that you might think you don't know about. And then there's this pressure of, oh, how do I handle this? I don't want to upset them. I don't want to get it wrong. I now feel scared, because also remember, you are human as well. You will have your own stuff as human beings that you bring to the table. There's a reason why you are who you are. That also, those things that make you who you are might include loss. Maybe it's grief. Whatever you've gone through in your life plays a part now in the human being that you are. So when you're with people talking about such emotive subjects, it's understandable that sometimes you might feel triggered, as they say. Triggered's a very bit of a buzzword at the minute, but it's true. There will be things that you might hear that you don't know how to deal with because it affects you in some way. It's all okay. Like I said, you're a human being. But I think that's the first thing I want to reassure people of today, like I said, is the importance of your role, but also the importance of you being able then to recognize when somebody when somebody is dying, or recognize the change in them and be able to hold that space for them as their friend when they start to want to talk about whether they'd like to be buried or cremated, or whether they're worried about what's going to happen to the cat. And what about the flowers in the garden that they would normally do? What happens when that can't, and they can't get out there anymore? And a lot of these things that you might hear, they might be easily fixed in the sense of maybe you get a gardener, maybe a family member has a cat. But as carers, what I want people to recognize, and you guys, which I'm sure you do know, but people aren't just worried about the cat. It's the emotional stuff behind that. And this is what comes up for people as they start to approach the end of their lives. It's not always necessarily obvious. But this is the other thing that you guys, I know, will hear, and it's those little gambits of information that people throw in that you might not be expecting. And somebody might be really stressed or anxious one day about the fact that Tesco's didn't deliver enough carrots. It's not the carrots. It's something else that is changing maybe in their life that they don't have control over. And you are the people that will pick up on that. It won't be the family. The family might dismiss somebody and go, "Oh, it's only carrots, Nan. What are you worried about?" And you're like, "Something's wrong. Betty isn't happy. It's not the carrots. It's because maybe she was incontinent and that's new for her and that's never happened. It's the fact that, there's another doctor's appointment and test results that she's worried about." That's the stuff I'm talking about. And that's the stuff that I think gets missed as people become more poorly, because we forget how much of a human experience dying is. It's not a clinical event. It's a very, very human one. And it's the humanness of it, the emotions behind it, the changes in our lives, the change in control, all of those things that happen for people. It's domiciliary care that walks alongside that. Because some people, the doctors won't hear it. They might not have time. The family don't want to hear it. Or they're hearing it and they're imparting their own words of wisdom and own emotions on the situation. You guys are that safe space. So you will recognize those little changes in people and their emotions as they start to shift. Oh, there's so many things I could cover. I said this to Jane and Ilaria. There's so many things I want to say. I'm going to try and keep it just a couple of key things now to kind of help with everything I've just said about you being able to walk alongside people. I think as in domiciliary care, like I said, it's a privilege for people to allow you into their home. That takes a lot of trust, and that sometimes takes time to build. And what happens is sometimes people live with care, don't they, for a very long time. So you might be looking after Betty for not just a case of weeks or months, but maybe even years. So you will notice when Betty starts to change. Poor Betty's going to go through a lot today. It's normally Bob, but we use Betty today. You're going to notice, and there are some key things that you're going to notice when somebody does start to become a lot less well, maybe not actively dying, but you will notice these critical changes as people approach the end of their lives. One of the big things is you will notice that they start to sleep more. They may not be awake at your 8 o'clock visit that you normally come in for, or they may need you to kind of, help them rouse, poke and prod them a little bit to let them come round. It might be that you start seeing them sleeping more at your lunchtime visit. It might be that when you go back for the tea time visit, the lunch is still sat there because they've actually slept through it and they're not hungry. It's all natural. When the body starts to die, it naturally slows down, becomes a lot weaker, and the muscles become weaker, and it needs to rest through the process. So you will notice your people sleeping a lot more. Another thing you'll notice is what I call mojo. You'll start to see people experiencing a lack or a change in their mojo. So somebody that maybe loved going to bingo and you take them to bingo every Tuesday, and then suddenly they go, "Oh, I just can't be bothered. I'm just not feeling it." For somebody that really enjoys the grandkids visiting, starts to go, oh, are they really coming over? How long are they staying? You know, everything becomes a little bit challenging. But what you'll also notice with that change in mojo is people starting to go, oh, well, are the grandkids coming? No, they're not. You said you didn't want to see them. Oh, now there's a real battle. It's like, well, okay, we won't go to bingo. And then the next day it's, well, I've not been out this week. I'm just stuck indoors. Say, well, we could have gone to bingo. No, I didn't want to go to bingo. Well, she'll go out now? Oh, no, I don't want to go out. That's the mojo. People start to really shift. There's a lack of confidence that people start to feel. And this comes no matter the age. This comes with illness and deterioration of our physical bodies in general. But you'll notice that lack of mojo affects what people enjoy, the people that they would normally connect with, the things that they would do for their mental health, their well-being, just to keep them active or to get some fresh air. All of those things start to seem a bit more challenging. The other big thing that you guys will notice, which is very much a natural, normal part of the dying process, is that people will start eating and drinking a lot less. This is the biggest, probably most common topic of conversation that I have with organizations, with professionals, and with families. As our bodies become a lot less well and they start to get ready to die, this slowing down, this tired, this fatigue, this weakness is all a natural part of the process. So is the reduction in appetite. So you will know people that maybe you've looked after that in the beginning, whether it was weeks or months or years ago, you might have gone in and cooked them a full English. Now they're maybe having half a bowl of porridge. You would have done them a whole sandwich, crisps and fruit for lunch, and now you're only making them one slice of bread in two. Their dinner might have been a jacket potato with cheese and beans, but now it's literally just a small boiled potato with a bit of grated cheese on top, if that. You know, a bowl of ice cream might turn into a mouthful of yogurt. All of that changes very naturally because our bodies are instinctively getting ready to shut down. You'll leave somebody a cup of tea and their glass of orange at lunch and you go back and they've not touched it. The body doesn't need to eat or drink as much as it starts to die. Now, this is so hard because it goes against the grain. This isn't what society tells us we should be doing because we should be feeding and watering and nurturing. It's what we do as a community, as family, Christmas, Easter, birthdays. We get together, we eat, we drink. It's part of how we celebrate and connect with each other. So when people start to eat and drink a lot less, it's really understandable then that families or people around that person really struggle because what do they then do if they can't bring Nan their favourite Bakewell tart every day? What do they do when they're spending all the money on shopping and it's not being eaten? You know, it's so hard to get your head around, but I just want to give you one sentence with that can really help people understand, particularly as people go on further through their dying time or the end of their lives, when they may not eat at all, which a dying body can go weeks, if not maybe even months without food. And that again is shocking, but it's true because the dying body doesn't need to eat. So it's not starving, not like a healthy body is. But if you need to try and explain that to somebody, the best line you can use is this: people are not dying because they're not eating. People aren't eating because they are dying. It switches the mindset. It changes the narrative of, oh, I need to feed somebody because they need energy because we need to keep them going. When you go, oh, actually, they're not eating because it's okay. It's a natural part of the dying process. Now, I wish I could see some of your faces because when I say this, people often start going, what, hey? Or there might be some of you nodding going, oh, okay, I get it. And I see that in my people. I see that in my morning round in John and Jeffrey because they were doing this and now they're doing this. You're probably also nodding because there's probably many family members that you've had those conversations with that just can't seem to get their head around the fact that you're not force feeding Nan her daily bowl of porridge. It's so hard. We used to say at the hospice and when I was in dom care that sometimes it wasn't the patients that were the problem, it was the families. I say the problem, you know what I mean? Sometimes our patients and our residents or our service users are absolutely brilliant and totally on board with the change in system, change in their process and their bodily functions and what their body is doing. But it's the family that can't quite keep up. So it's really hard, but you guys are on the front line with this. It will be you that hears these conversations, you're present for these changes and it will be you that some of these conversations fall on. And I think that's the other thing that's really important is, as carers, and this is what I do with my masterclass, but as carers, we need to feel empowered and confident and reassured to be able to hold the conversations. And another big part of that, though, is us being able to look at ourselves and think about how we think and feel about death and dying, how we feel about having the conversation with our people, how we feel about our own mortality. Because if we can face that in a little bit more of a deeper way, it will allow us to hold space and be there to listen when other people bring up the difficult conversations. Oh gosh, I've just seen the time. There's so much I could say. I hope just in the bits that I have covered there highlights your important role. It highlights some of the things that I know you're going to see. And hopefully it just highlights the impact that you can have as well, just by being able to sit alongside people. You don't need to fix and rescue any of this stuff. You don't need to be able to get the answers right. You don't need to be able to know what to say to everything. What your role is going to mean is that you just need to remember to be a deeply compassionate human being, walking alongside another human being at the end of their lives, and know that actually all of these things you will witness in somebody that's dying, it's natural, it's normal, it's instinctive, and it's intuitive. Death that isn't scary like you see on EastEnders or Hobby City or a film. 95% of deaths are a calm, natural, peaceful situation. One lady said to me recently that she was actually upset because her husband's death was a real anticlimax, because she was expecting this big traumatic thing and it wasn't. Now, don't get me wrong, I know there are complex situations. I know that things don't always go to plan. But statistically, customer service wise, if you're thinking about going to a restaurant or in a shop, if you have good service, say you have a lovely meal, statistically, you're likely to tell 3 people. If you go and have a rubbish meal, there's hair in your food and the waiter was rude, you're statistically likely to tell 10 people. That's exactly what happens with death. We only share the difficult, awful, traumatic stuff. We only share the stuff where there's a story to tell. Most deaths are normal and natural. So in your role, you will see it. And hopefully you've seen those normal, natural deaths. But they're often more scary because we don't know what to expect.
Katie, thank you. No worries. So we can do some times for the questions. But in the meantime, I wanted to thank you for sharing all this information with us. It's very reassuring. And I really like how you said that that is not a clinical event. It's very human. Lots of feeling will be involved. And thanks as well for sharing some signals that the care workers can recognize to support someone at the end of life. So I just want to remind quickly to the audience that if you have some questions for Katie, please use the Q&A session. It's at the bottom right of the screen under the meeting tools. It looks like a grid, so you can start asking your question there. In the meantime, I have a few questions from the audience. So someone asked, for example, how to deal with sad or mourning feelings after the client has passed, especially in the relationship with family members. So do you have any advice around that?
We have to recognize that if we've been particularly looking after somebody for a long time, you will feel grief, and that's okay. What we also need to recognize is that you can't fix grief. Somebody asked me this the other day and said, how can I get over it quickly to be able to be there for the next person? And the simple answer is you can't. If you have a feeling and an emotion, it's okay to sit with that. It's okay to ask for supervision, for support, to go back to your own therapist, to let yourself cry, feel whatever it is you need to feel. You can't get over grief quickly. What you can do, and what is the most healthy thing to do if you can, is to honor that grief. Maybe you have your own ritual, your own faith. Maybe you light a candle and say a prayer when you get home. Maybe you just eat something that person loved. I looked after a lady recently who loved Battenbergs. You can get mini Battenberg cakes. So I got some Battenbergs, had a cup of tea and sat and had a little cry and ate a Battenberg in her honor. It's whatever you need to do to be able to get through. And that is applicable whether you're a carer, a family member, no matter what. Grief, the only way to move through life with grief is to grieve. Now, what that looks like might be a really rough afternoon and then you're okay the next day. It might be that you really struggle and need long-term support. You do whatever you need to do. There isn't a quick fix, unfortunately.
Thank you, Katie. And I think we had a question, and sometimes maybe it feels that you need some time off after service user dies, but maybe your manager didn't give you that time. So how can you maybe manage those feelings that you're having?
Oh, again, it's a tough one. To manage those feelings, if you need time off, you need time off. And I know how impossible it is, because if you're in dom care and you've got your visits for the morning and someone goes sick and you have to fit everybody in, logistically, it's a nightmare. But you come first, and you are no good to anybody if you are just going to you're going to get compassion fatigue, you're going to burn out, you're going to hit a brick wall. And I've had to learn that with my son midwifery particularly. So if it's a case of management not understanding, that's a whole other issue as regards reporting to HR. Maybe it's a safeguarding, maybe for the well-being of the team. If it's that serious, something needs to be said and done. But if you need time off, you need time off. It's that simple. You have to look after yourself. Because also what you would hope is that your management would understand that if you need a morning off or a day off, or you need to go home after somebody's died, giving you the afternoon off, you might be able to come back the next day. If they don't, you might have a week off. So it's in their best interest from the needs of the business perspective to give you the time off in the moment. Otherwise, it will only be worse for you and therefore for them later on down the road. But it's so hard to say, because businesses obviously work differently, and it depends on the people within that business.
Thank you very much, Katie. And I think it really resonated what you were saying before about how you're phrasing a sentence. So I think someone was saying, like, if you could repeat in regards to, it's not that someone is dying because they're not eating, but they're not eating because they're dying. So just shifting the mindset on how also you can communicate to family members and other people around that person.
Yeah, because families seem to think, and it goes on you as carers, or in nursing homes it's the same, in hospitals even. Family will be like, but you've not fed them, they've not eaten. They can't seem to understand that actually when you've tried to give Betty her yogurt, she's clamped her mouth shut and shaken her head at you, or she's flung it across the room, or she's just left it by choice. As and when we start to approach the end of our lives, whether that be days, weeks, or months ahead, the appetite reduces. So actually we need to recognize that people, that they're not starting to die because they're not eating. They're not eating because they're starting to die. So it's that switch round, and to understand that the not eating is instinctive and intuitive and natural. Our bodies know what they're doing. It's just us that struggles to pay attention.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you very much. And I can see some people are using the QA function as well to thank you for everything that you shared with us, all your knowledge and all your advice. So if anyone here would like to know more about Katie's work, as she mentioned before, you can start from Done for a Kappa. So this is a podcast and training course. So you can just search for Done for a Kappa, but we will also send you the link in the mail to you together with the recording of the session today. And in terms of our webinar series, we kind of are done for this year, but no worries, because we will be back in 2026 with more fantastic speakers. So you can keep an eye out on our website. So for now, thank you so much again, Katie, and to everyone that joined us here today. Take care, everyone.